Mark here again. Another chat about the situation we find ourselves in Western Australia, or in fact in Australia. In the general thing I've been talking about, for those that don't know, it is about our new firearms laws, laws that have been brought in all senses undemocratically, with a fair bit of theatre to say the otherwise, but things overreaching in all sorts of fashions, and really with the goal of disarming the population under the brackets of for public safety, while actually changing nothing about public safety whatsoever, but giving a lot more power to our police force, and a lack of separation of powers in government, and all sorts of fairly ominous things as to what's coming, especially when you consider once they got through the theatre of what getting them and making these laws even more official with a review, which was really staged to look like they were listening to the people, while not whatsoever. And I can go into more detail about that, as I have done, but in a real sense, they've already moved on to, the moment that was finished, they moved on to the fisheries. As much as we know they're taking bites from everywhere, they've moved quite aggressively into the fisheries and what they're doing with the fishermen of Western Australia. And of course, for anyone who's paying attention, everyone else is in the crosshairs. Four drivers, farmers, parents, individuals of all forms. And we know that's the case. There's a fair bit of separation happening in the firearms side of things with clubs and organisations and things, and what happens when people get squeezed hard, are treated like criminals, and the problems that are happening there. And I've previously made several suggestions about what we should be doing as a community, trying to build up, get together, create things, and in the way of to push back, whether those newspaper articles or those fundraising for lobbying or for legal actions, all that sort of stuff. And that is starting to happen in places. So that's good on the people that are doing that, and please get involved with that. But in those conversations and trying to find the other angles or more constructive angles to try and do things, and keeping in mind, there is no organisation, there is no individual, there's no one who's going to save us. We have to save us. We have to work at how to do that. And that moves into getting more people woken up, absolutely. And part of what I've been up to is having conversations with all sorts of people. And that's inside the firearms industry and outside it, and the clubs and all that sort of stuff. And there's some common threads that have got me thinking a little deeper. And those common threads are what a lot of West Aussies, or probably Aussies, think, which isn't actually the case. What am I actually talking about there? Well, a couple of things. One is, when we know, as if you go through, read the documents, read the Hansards and things from politicians, go through and know the process of what happened, we know that our government breaks the law. Whether it's just parliamentary rules, or it's bylaws, or it's actual laws, it's federal laws, they break the law quite commonly. And anyone, if you actually stop and think, well, they shouldn't have done that, that's against the law, that sort of stuff, or it's against the rules, we know that happens all the time. But people seem to dismiss it, or when it comes to something serious, they think, well, can't have really broken the law, otherwise something would have happened, wouldn't it? No, nothing happens. There's a bit that's really missing in that point that people don't understand. Laws get prosecuted, people get charged for things, you break the law, you get busted. You pay a fine, you get a penalty, you go to jail, whatever. You break a law, it happens to you, because the government prosecutes you. But when the prosecutor, which is, and keep in mind, the government, the court system, they're all in bed together, they're all working together. When they break the law, there's no one to prosecute them. The way a government system's supposed to work is that the people have the power, and so the government breaks the law, the people prosecute them. I don't know if that's exactly the right term, but the people charge them, the people take them to court, and a court that is for the people, not for the government, and the court prosecutes them, and they're charged, and there is consequences. We know, anyone who's paying attention knows full well there are no consequences for our government, because actually it is a mess, it no longer works, but ultimately because we, the people, don't try to prosecute them. We don't charge them, we don't do this, because we think they've got our back. No, they haven't got our back. They've got They're claws in our back and they're telling us what to do. That is what's happening. That is the process of what's in play. And that's something that there should be another process. We need to fix that system. But here's another thing, and this is what leads in this other thing, is that people are, in all cases, when you go through this process of these conversations of how bad things are, people are expecting the government to fix it. Okay, there's this part of the government that's out of control. Well, the other part of the government, the other things, it'll get voted in. It's how you vote will change this. If you vote the right people in, they'll fix it. And I want you to, I suppose, pay attention to history a little bit. The things that we know are getting worse just keep getting worse. The other things is listen to even the good members of Parliament, senators, or whoever they are in bits and in the places you can think about around our country, in all the different levels of government. They talk about things. There are some seemingly good ones, or good ones, let's just go with good ones rather than judge them harshly, that do talk about the bad things that the government's doing. They should have done this, they shouldn't have done this. Have you ever heard one of them say, if we will prosecute them, this should be taken to courts and this should be prosecuted. This should be stopped because this is wrong. Or do they say, if I was voted in, I wouldn't have done it that way. That's the wrong thing, so you should vote for me. The largest degree are parliamentarians of all forms, at all levels, don't talk about fixing it. They talk about if they were in power. So in other words, vote for me and then I'll make it right. So in other words, it's really just about voting. That's the only place where you matter to this government. That's the only place where you matter. No matter how egregious, no matter how badly they do things, the only place your voice gets a chance is in voting. Once again, that's the wrong way to look at this. The way government should work, the way government's supposed to work, is that they are for the people. So they go there with our best interests in mind. And that's actually how it can still happen. If we stop being led by the nose, if we stop just waiting for the right parliamentarian to stand up, and we start trying to prosecute a government, we start standing up and doing what it takes, and whatever that is, whether that's strikes, whether that's not paying for things, whether that's, I don't know what it is, or protest, whatever it is. It turns into civil war, by the way, when it goes bad enough. That's the sort of civil unrest that will happen if they do things bad enough and we don't react first. So the process is, if we start to actually lead, we start to do more, to say, listen, that's not okay, then the parliamentarians will jump on board with that. They will go where the vote goes. That's where they will go. At this moment, we're waiting to see what they've got to suggest so we can vote for them. It shouldn't be that way around. That's not how this system was designed to work. And yes, you could say maybe we should chuck the whole system out. It's probably a reasonable argument. The main point would be, in all fashions, the people need to start to get louder. We need to wake everyone up and say, listen, this is not okay. We want to come back to where the people matter more than the government, because that's certainly not the place we're in. And I suppose the other parts of those conversations, when you start to have these conversations, there is the Commonwealth custodians, there's the people that are known as common law sheriffs, that side of things. They will tend to go with, or do go with, the 1901 Constitution, because the 1901 Constitution meant that there were laws that our government has been avoiding, stepping over, getting away with, all sorts of things, not done the process of what's still there. And those guys do have a point that 1901 Constitution does give some form of protections. But even if you get into that, you'll find a peculiar thing in these conversations, that Australia is, as far as I can find at least, the only Western country that does not have a Charter of Rights, does not have rights to the individual. Yes, us as Australians don't have any rights. We are given privileges which they can take or remove at their whim, and now we've moved into where if you don't think right, you can lose all your privileges because we don't have rights. Now, this conversation is loaded already, and it's been loaded deliberately by people that don't want to lose all the power. But the moment you go rights, people talk Bill of Rights. I've mentioned Bill of Rights before. It's loaded with, well, that's American. You're just after American gun laws. You're just after American gun culture, that side of things, that sort of comment. Now, those people don't know what American gun culture actually is. I'm not going to get into that conversation because it's not what they've painted it to be. But I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about even a Bill of Rights. A Bill of Rights is an old term for, it's a Charter of Rights in other places that it's actually called. I'm actually talking about individual rights. Rights that we think we all have. I mean, you would think if you haven't broken the law, you haven't hurt anybody, you haven't done anything wrong, then you have some rights. You should have a right to life. You should have a right to maybe own some possessions. You should have a right to being able to have a bank account. You should have a right to be able to fit in this world and function. If you're a functional member, you should be able to have some rights in that form. I'm not saying all rights, you should just be able to have what you want, but you should have some rights. In some cases, they're called, and this is probably a step slightly different, but God-given rights or natural rights. These are things that our international society recognises that people should have. We don't actually even really have them when it comes to the way our government performs and the way it's behaving. And maybe with enough pressure in the High Court, maybe we could push into it. But wait a minute, let's come back to this point. We don't even have, we're the only Western country that doesn't have a form of individual rights. That doesn't make much sense. Then follow this thought through a little bit. I mentioned God-given rights. In a country that it becomes less and less God-fearing, less and less believing in God, less and less religion, well, at least Christianity and its different forms, that doesn't really mean much. God-given rights don't mean anything to a lot of the people. It is actually talking about right to life. It's actually talking about right to some personal freedom, some personal privacies. But these are things that, well, let's go through a little bit further of the like I said, this is loaded language where there's a lot of things that say, well, you're talking about something that's nothing to do with us. No, I'm talking about things that you, and even full lefty you, full progressive you, full whatever it is, woke you feel you have some rights. Now, some of our minorities in this world and some of the way it's set up, some people do have more rights in some senses, only while the wind's blowing in your direction. So when the political sway of our government is more on the minority side, on the whatever it is side, let's not go poking pins in those cushions, but the wind's blowing your way, okay, you do have more rights in this society. But when it comes right down to it, the moment you do the wrong thing by that little crowd and you get labelled something else, well, you come back with the rest of us, especially white Caucasian firearms owners, male firearms owners. It comes down to where you almost have none. You only have privileges and they will take them away at the click of their fingers. Now that's not okay. And it shouldn't be referred to as the American Bill of Rights, because that's an easy one for this progressive world to target as, we don't want to be like that. I would argue differently, but we don't even need to go there. How about just the natural rights that you thought you should have? If you look at where they normally come from, they normally come out of, and I suppose what I'm trying to say, why doesn't Australia have a Charter of Rights, individual rights, individual Aussie rights? Why don't we have rights for the individual? Well, the reason is, in a practical sense, is we've not got to that place. It's always sort of worked. We've not got to where there's a civil war. We've not got to where we've had the turmoil, the killing, the horrible places where this people stand up and do the right thing in the way of where we have smart people go through and write a set of rules that everyone has to abide by. Our government has to abide by, we have to abide by, corporations have to advise by, banks have to advise by, have to stick to. These rules are things that actually cover everybody. They are then something that control things like our government, like overreaching police forces and governments, like overreaching, now if you know what's going on, Telstra are about to change their terms of service where they can remove their service or your service for, in some fashions, the people associate with, or it'll get into wrongthink. Where we have banks are already doing that, we have governments are doing that. These are all things that you can say, okay, a Bill of Rights, a Charter of Rights is just for our government. No, it's for our whole country, and it's for all of the things that are around you and can control you. This would be a very valuable thing to get onto. A Charter of Rights, a individual rights for Australians would be something that we are long overdue for. We are an old enough country. We've been around long enough now to do this without going to civil war or massive civil unrest to have to make it happen. We should be able to make it happen by itself. You come back to the situation where here in Western Australia with our firearms laws, all the fights we're doing and all the things we're trying to do should be happening also. But if we can also push into and be part of creating something for Australians, which then ties everyone else into it. The fishermen that are getting targeted now, they're going to need help. They're going to be coming up with their own strategies and that sort of stuff. But be it the four-wheel driver, be it the farmers, be it the parents, be it actually absolutely anybody. Just because you don't fit the way the wind's blowing at the moment and the government decided to tweak those rules, we have social media bans coming in, we have facial recognition on licenses coming in. We have the amount of things that are coming in as this government keep pushing down this road because we do not have any protections. An individual right for privacy. We don't actually have one. We have a privilege that they can remove. So we can actually tie and bring in everyone into this. This brings the progressives, the people that might fight all sorts of things that we like, but if you can wake them up to the fact that they are in the same crosshairs, this might suit them right now. There might be people happy to have a chip put in their wrist so they can go through without anything whatsoever, and they can then be fully documented and do anything they want until the wind changes, and then they are going to be trapped in the same 5-minute area that they can reside in and have the surveillance from McDonnell Douglas and our computer systems and our cameras from China that are watching us and trapping us into a certain place because we have no rights, because they've removed those privileges. Now, I think it's a very valuable thing to go with. I think it really is a conversation that we should be having. I haven't got answers of how to do it. I think the answers should come from our community, and I think it's something that we should build up as to, it really fits everything about Australian. It is about us as a country maturing, and we do need to pull the reins in some places and maybe let them go in other places, but we need to sort it out. This is something we can be all on board with. And maybe it comes into organisations as well. I think it's a movement I'm trying to create. And I should take the I out of it. This is a movement I feel we should create, that we should get on board with creating a movement. Whether that's organisations like the new Australian Rights Coalition, which is, I think, starting to get together and turn into a thing. There's a meeting on shortly for them to actually release the thing and go properly. There's other ones around the country that are doing similar sort of fashions, always focused in one particular area. What if we focused on actually gaining some actual rights for individuals in our country? I think that is one of the most powerful things we could possibly do. And I'm not saying stop what you're doing for protecting firearms by any means whatsoever, but by this, you can actually be involved in protecting other rights as well, and hopefully get other people into protecting your rights as well. Well, let's not even go with protecting at the moment. How about creating rights for Australians? West Australians, the whole lot of us. It's about time that we caught up with the rest of the world in that sort of score, and certainly, as our government is showing us, is if we don't, we're going to be in a lot more trouble real soon. Anyway, that's that one there. That's all I've got to say on it. I really look forward to your comments and your thoughts on the subject, suggestions on the subject, but more than anything, I'd like you to start this conversation. Go out and talk to in your groups. If you're on a four-wheel driving channel, if you're on a fishing channel, you're in a fishing club or a farming or whatever it is, how about we start talking about whatever it's supposed to be called? Charter of Rights, Aussie rights, individual rights, I don't know. I don't know the right name. Bill of Rights is the wrong one because it will be branded as something else, but Aussie rights is something that I feel is our only real way forward in the way of saving what this mess that's coming, or stopping this mess that's coming for us. Anyway guys, thanks very much for checking in. Hope you liked the video. We'll catch you next time.